Inside the historic Palm House in Liverpool, the air was thick with more than just the winter chill. It was December 2025, and the glass dome of the Victorian Conservatory felt like a cathedral of light. As the first notes of a piano drifted through the ferns and palms, a young woman stepped into the spotlight. She didn't arrive with the pyrotechnics or the aggressive marketing of a pop titan. Instead, she brought a silence that commanded the room. When Lucy Thomas began to sing, something staggering happened. It wasn't just a performance, it was a collective emotional release. As the footage of that night began to circulate across the Atlantic, thousands of Americans found themselves stopping mid-scroll, gripped by a vocal purity that seemed impossible in the modern age. Comment sections were flooded with people from across the globe, many admitting they were in tears before the first chorus had even finished. But as the miracle of her voice went viral once again, a deeper question began to surface. Who was this girl who seemed to have appeared from nowhere, yet possessed the poise of a seasoned legend? The world was seeing a finished masterpiece, but the journey to that glass conservatory had been paved with rejection and a quiet, stubborn defiance of the entire music industry. Behind the effortless high notes lay a story of a child prodigy who was told she wasn't enough, and a family that decided to bet everything on a dream that the gatekeepers of fame had already dismissed. But to understand why this moment felt like a miracle, we have to go back to the night everything almost ended before it began. The year was 2018, and the stage was set for The Voice Kids UK. A 14-year-old girl from Wigan, Lancashire, stood before the spinning red chairs, her voice carrying a weight and a wisdom that far surpassed her years. Lucy Thomas wasn't like the other contestants. There was no desperation in her delivery, only an ethereal clarity that stopped the coaches in their tracks. Danny Jones, Pixie, and will.i.am were mesmerized, and for a few weeks it seemed as though the path to superstardom was being laid out in real time. But the reality of televised talent competitions is often far harsher than the bright lights suggest. Despite being a clear fan favorite, the moment of reckoning came during the semifinals. As the results were read aloud, the unthinkable happened. Lucy was sent home. For most children, that moment is a crushing finale, a public signal that perhaps their dream was just that, a dream. The industry is littered with the names of young singers who reached the penultimate stage of fame only to be forgotten by the following season. There were no major labels waiting in the wings with multi-million-dollar contracts that night. The cameras stopped rolling, the audience went home, and Lucy was left with the echo of a no that could have defined her life. Yet, while the winners of the show were being ushered into the fleeting world of pop stardom, a quiet transformation was taking place in Lancashire. While most child stars fade into obscurity after such a public loss, Lucy was about to make a decision that would defy the entire music industry. Instead of chasing the approval of major labels or trying to mold herself into a radio-friendly pop star, Lucy and her family took an unconventional path. They turned to Cavendish Records, a small independent label that saw what the talent shows had missed, the timelessness of her tone. While her peers were trying to go viral with dance trends, Lucy began a meticulous process of recording classic covers from her own home. She became a ghost in the machine of the digital age, a singer whose face was everywhere on YouTube, but whose life remained entirely private. Her channel began to grow, not through stunts, but through the sheer, undeniable quality of her work. Videos like Hallelujah and In the Arms of an Angel weren't just viewed, they were experienced. By 2025, she had amassed over 300 million views, becoming the most successful British teenage singer on the platform. Yet, she remained an independent artist. She was building an empire without the permission of the gatekeepers, reaching a global audience that major labels spend millions to find. But this independent rise brought its own set of challenges. Without the cushion of a massive agency, the pressure to maintain vocal perfection was immense. Every video had to be flawless, every note had to be divine. The young girl from Wigan was no longer just a singer. She was a beacon of hope for a digital audience that was increasingly hungry for something real. But as her voice reached every corner of the globe, the pressure of maintaining that angelic perfection began to take a staggering toll. The comments on Lucy's videos are unlike those on any other artist's page. They aren't just fans. They are people in mourning, people in pain, and people seeking a miracle. One listener writes about playing Lucy's music at a loved one's funeral. Another speaks of her voice being the only thing that could calm their anxiety during a personal crisis. This is a heavy burden for any artist to carry, let alone a young woman in her early 20s. The image of the angel of Wigan became a double-edged sword. To the public, she was a symbol of purity and untouchable talent. Behind the scenes, the reality was much more grounded. She was a young woman trying to navigate the transition from childhood to adulthood while being the emotional anchor for millions of strangers. There were whispers from insiders about the isolation of this kind of fame. The independent path meant she didn't have a cohort of peers going through the same experience. She lived in a world where her every breath was scrutinized for its technical precision. The miracle of her voice was something she had to deliver on demand, week after week. As the world moved into the mid-2020s, the digital landscape became harsher, and the demand for more content grew louder. Lucy faced a crossroads: stay safe in the world of covers, or risk everything by trying to find her own original voice. However, the biggest test was yet to come, an ambitious project that would either cement her legacy or prove her critics right. In late 2024, Lucy made a move that many thought was a massive risk. She moved away from the comfort of YouTube covers and stepped into the world of musical, taking the lead role in the original studio cast recording and subsequent stage performances of. This wasn't just another album. It was a bid for legitimacy as a storyteller and an actress. If she failed, she would be remembered as just a YouTube singer. The project was an explosive success, culminating in her West End debut at the Royal Lane. The performance was a revelation. It proved that the girl who could sing a perfect cover in a studio could also hold a live audience captive for hours. It was during this period that the American market finally began to wake up. Major vocal coaches and reactors in the United States began featuring her work, stunned by the realization that such a talent had been operating independently for years. The discovery of Lucy Thomas by the American public in 2025 was like a wildfire. Suddenly, people who had grown tired of the overproduced, auto-tuned landscape of modern pop were finding their way to a girl from Lancashire who didn't need any of it. The stage was set for a moment that would transcend mere fame and become something much more spiritual. But just as she reached the peak of her powers, a single holiday performance would change the narrative forever. The Christmas miracle of 2025 wasn't planned as a viral stunt. It was a simple homecoming concert at the Palm House in Liverpool, but the atmosphere that night was charged with something inexplicable. As Lucy stood among the greenery, her voice resonating off the glass walls, she performed a rendition of White Christmas that felt as if it were being heard for the first time. It wasn't just the technical perfection of the notes, it was the vulnerability. For the first time, the perfect angel seemed human. There was a subtle crack in the emotion, a depth of feeling that suggested she understood the weight of the song she was singing. When the video hit the internet, the reaction was staggering. America, in the midst of a holiday season, found itself weeping over a performance from a Liverpool conservatory. It was called a miracle not because of the timing, but because of the effect. In a world of division and digital noise, this one voice had managed to create a moment of absolute, quiet peace. It was the moment Lucy Thomas ceased being an internet mystery and became a global icon of vocal excellence. As the final note faded that night, the world realized this wasn't just a holiday song. It was the arrival of a new vocal era. Today, as we look toward her scheduled European tour in late 2026, the landscape for Lucy Thomas has shifted entirely. She is no longer the girl who was rejected by a talent show. She is the artist who proved that the talent show was wrong. She has built a career on her own terms, maintaining her integrity and her privacy while her voice reaches billions. The Lucy Thomas effect is now being studied by industry insiders. She has shown that there is a massive audience for pure music, for voices that don't need to hide behind production. Her success is a testament to the power of the human spirit to overcome rejection and the ability of a single talent to move an entire nation to tears. The Christmas Miracle wasn't just about a song sung under a glass dome in Liverpool. It was about the realization that some talents are too big for a single stage, and some voices are destined to be heard by the whole world, no matter how many times they are told no.